Welcome to another episode on my channel. Last time I compared Cotman versus Aquafine student grade watercolours, and this time I'm going to compare Cotman with Winsor and Newton Professional, so both manufactured by the same company. So I have here Cotman shade 231 Dioxazine Purple, which is single pigment PY35, which is Dioxazine Violet. The professional equivalent is 733, which is slightly more expensive. It is called Winsor Violet, and it is pure PB23 Dioxazine Violet. So the equivalent prices are: a tube of Cotman is £2.60, but it's 8 millilitres. The tube of Professional is £5.90 for 5 millilitres. These are recommended retail prices. So 35 pence per mil for this Cotman, and slightly more expensive in smaller tubes, £1.18 per mil for the Professional. So it's about 3 times more expensive to buy the good one. I'm using a Pentel water brush here, and I'll put product details in the description for everything that I'm using, and I'm working just on Aquafine cold press postcard here. So I've just basically taken a couple of pans that I made myself by drying down the tubes, and I've streaked over a 1 centimetre area twice, and then just gone straight onto the paper to show how much pigment picks up and transfers. These pans were set, the Professional was just set normally, the Cotman was mixed with a drop of glycerol, stirred in and allowed to set, and they've had 3 days in a cold room to set. Just blotting off there to show how much lifts, and this colour does lift generally pretty well, which is why it's one of my favourite purples, to be honest. I'm now taking the Professional, streaking over exactly the same kind of area again, and now applying it to the page, and you can see immediately the colour intensity is so much higher to begin with. There is much more colour per unit area, and it lifts out of the pan so much better onto a wet brush. It releases so much better. I should say, just blotting again there to show the lifting, that I misted the surface of the pans 15 minutes before I did this test to allow them to sort of lift a little bit. So moving it closer to the camera and just trying to get it so you can see it, you can just about make out there that the Professional, even though I spread it very fine, has got much more pigment load than the student grade, which is of course exactly what we would expect. Now I'm just taking a little bit more here and streaking it just along the edge of that wet area, and you can see it kind of granulates a little bit and it dissolutes. It doesn't keep the intensity all the way to the end of the streak. I'm just wiping off on a baby wipe off camera, that's what you can't see, and I'm now doing it again with the Professional, and just look at this, it's almost black at the beginning, and in fact I do use this as an alternative to black quite often for shadows. And you can see, look at that wonderful intensity of colour that you just don't get with the student grade. Now the wonderful thing about this, of course, is by spending that little bit of extra money per tube, so double the price to get a single tube, and I can still get about 3 pans worth, whether I'm using student grade or Professional grade, out of the tube. But what you're getting is a paint where you need to use so much less to get the same intensity of colour. And remember that in the student grade there'll be binders, sort of chalky things in there that are going to mean that when you're having to use extra, you're going to get a muddy, chalky feel to what you're painting. So now I'm going to do a little test by mixing it with its complement to make a brown or grey. So first of all, I'm wetting the paper, and just to sort of prove that the pen that I used, unlike the one I used last time, isn't going to dissolve into the water and make a mess. I'm now going to put some Cadmium Yellow Professional grade. So this is a genuine Cadmium Yellow, not a hue in colour. And I'm just going to pop some of that onto here. There we go. And what I'm going to do is mix it with some Dioxazine Purple and some Winsor Violet just to see what happens. And it's quite an interesting effect, actually, seeing what differences you get when you mix something with complement. Now, I've used a Professional Cadmium Yellow here. I haven't used the Cotman Cadmium Yellow. So by mixing in, what you get is, and the camera doesn't pick this up brilliantly, it's a very purpley, reddy colour. It's not a neutral grey, as one would perhaps expect. It's also granulated quite a lot, and it's got a very red undertone to it. Now, when I first did this with the Professional, as you can see, I've way overloaded it. There is so much pigment in the Dioxazine Violet when you buy it at Professional grade that it just obliterated the yellow. So I'm going to get some more yellow now onto my brush, slap that on and mix the two areas together. This is not intended to be a very scientific test. It's just to show the basic differences. So as I mix that in, you've got a much creamier, much more neutral, I guess, brownish grey developing, rather than that very red granulated colour above. It hasn't granulated at all. It's kind of kept its tone. It's kept the yellow. You can very much see it. And if I added more and more purple through into that yellow, which I'm doing now, eventually you do get quite a nice deep almost greyish brown. You don't get a nice clean neutral grey because the cadmium yellow has such a strong red undertone that it never quite sort of levels off, but you don't get that very burgundy like you get there with the Cotman. When you use the professional, you do get something a little bit more like I suppose a sienna or yellow ochre. Personally, I would never want to try and make a grey using cadmium yellow with anything. It's got too much red in it for my liking. So thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you at my next video.